You do have to answer then, so what does Israel do now? If there is no, and I agree with it, there is no potential for what people have been clamoring for, this two-state solution. We do see in Europe diplomatically, we saw it in America, that there is diplomatic daylight for the first time. We saw a prime minister come to speak to a joint session of Congress, and there were Democratic congressmen and senators who boycotted his speech. And there are people who are warning, and you've written about this, who are warning that while you're right, economically, Israel is not being isolated in the global sense. But diplomatically, there is a growing outrage that Israel hasn't stopped settlements, is not removing settlements, and there's a suggestion the United Nations is going to impose upon the Middle East a new Palestinian state on what is called the West Bank. If you're not for a two-state solution, what is Yoram Ettinger's suggestion? What should Israel do now to create as much peace for Israelis and the region as possible?
Become stronger and stronger and stronger. That's how you survive in a bad neighborhood, and that's how you accumulate respect. But most importantly, we should be very careful not to be trapped by what I call the Palestine Firster school of thoughts. Namely, we have to realize that the American agenda, certainly, but also the European agenda, transcends by far the secondary or tertiary Palestinian issue. The Palestinian issue does not preoccupy the agenda of the Americans or the Europeans or anyone in the world. Anyone in the world.
Are you saying we simply don't have to worry?
No. Again, we need to worry. We have to be on guard. We should not be complacent. But when Netanyahu comes to meet with Obama and they disagree completely on the Palestinian issue, there's no way that anyone can bridge that gap. However, at the same time, U.S.-Israel geostrategic, economic, and military, and scientific, and agricultural cooperation is at an all-time high, irrespective of the disagreement over the Palestinian issue. And here again, I'll resort to my Texas background. When you drive in West Texas, which is a huge desert, and afflicted by many real rough storms, they usually warn you when you drive between Midland and Lubbock or Amarillo, Texas, and you're smothered by a huge sandstorm, don't get preoccupied with the tumbleweeds on the road. The Palestinian issue, compared to the real issues preoccupying America and Europe or the Arabs, is a tumbleweed on the road, nothing more and nothing less. And therefore, rather than delude ourselves or mislead ourselves that we have to concentrate on the Palestinian issue, we have to do our utmost to resolve it at the expense of other issues, we should focus again on reality. The reality is that irrespective of disagreement between Obama and Netanyahu over the Palestinian issue, today, Israel is by far the most effective ally of America, not only in the Middle East, anywhere in the world. Americans on their way to Afghanistan and Iraq stop in Israel for 3-week training by Israeli experts facing suicide bombers, car bombs, and improvised explosive devices. The U.S. intelligence benefits from Israel much more than they get from NATO. According to experts in American intelligence, Israel provides the U.S. with intelligence which is worth more or less 5 CIAs. If you look at the American defense industry, They benefit from Israel, which has become by far the most cost-effective, battle-tested laboratory for the American defense industry. I visited the plant which manufactures the F-16 in Fort Worth, Texas, and the plant manager told me that the current generation of the F-16 has some 700 modifications, which are the byproduct of Israeli lessons using the F-16. And according to him, this has been a mega billion-dollar bonanza for the manufacturer. I assume the F-15 in Missouri, McDonnell Douglas, benefits in a similar manner. We're talking about mega billion annual benefits to America generated by Israel, which, by the way, by far exceeds the $3.1 billion, which erroneously is referred to as foreign aid. Israel does not receive foreign aid from this country. The $3.1 billion is an American investment in Israel, which yields a return by far higher than the $3.1 billion. The other day, the CEO of Intel told the board of directors in the Silicon Valley, if not for Intel's 4 research and development centers in Israel, Intel would have been decimated by the competition. How many billions is that worth? There is a reason why 250 of the American and European high-tech giants have in Israel research and development centers. And Israel has become not only the startup nation, we are the most effective pipeline of cutting-edge technologies, product of the brain power in Israel, which find themselves in the manufacturing facilities of the American high-tech giants, complement again of Israel. Today, U.S. and Israel together are the world co-leaders, and usually in a joint fashion, in the research and development and manufacturing and launching of minuscule, small-size and medium-size satellites. That's not an operation by a supplicant nation which awaits the Americans to extend the hand. This is an action by a junior partner collaborating with a senior partner, America, and together, I believe, we have established a win-win type of relationship which exists in defiance of those who claim that the Palestinian issue is the crux of the relations, the core cause of turbulence, and the crown jewel of Arab policymaking. None of that is true.
You've given us a very good overview. One of the things that people are claiming, however, is there's a real-life problem on the ground because you've got, and the number varies, how many millions of Palestinians are living on the West Bank. And again, Peter Beinart would have said to you in a debate, and they don't have the right to vote, they're disenfranchised, they're an occupied and brutalized people, they're not free. And people want to know, well, if there's not going to be a two-state solution, Yoram, do you think Israel should annex the West Bank? And should it give citizenship or a path to citizenship to all the Palestinians on the West Bank? What would you do now with the human situation of non-Jews in this large number living on a piece of land which they really don't control militarily and which you don't want to give up?
My bottom line is that eventually, not immediately, but eventually, the Judea and Samaria have to be annexed into Israel, exactly as Ben-Gurion did after the 48 war, with many parts of the Galilee, many parts of the Negev, with Jaffa, parts of Tel Aviv, and with West Jerusalem, which was not supposed to be also part of Israel. We should do the same thing with Judea, Samaria, if we want to survive in the real Middle East. However, we should do it, in my mind, gradually. First and foremost, those Arabs in Judea and Samaria who are involved in terrorism, incitement, hate education should not be allowed to become Israelis, if at all be allowed to remain in the area. And we're not talking about few hundreds or few thousand. We're talking about 200,000 or 300,000 Arabs in that area. The rest, in my mind, potentially, yes, they will become citizens. Today, the ratio of Arabs in Judea, Samaria, combined with Arabs with pre-67 Israel, is 66% Jews, 34% Arabs.
And that would include the Arab population on the West Bank.
Judea and Samaria. Now, that should take into consideration, again, the trend. The trend is a demographic tailwind for Jews and westernization of Arab demography, and we haven't touched on potential aliyah. Potential aliyah, if you look at the 600,000 Jews in France, most of whom have made up their mind. They are going out. Now the question is, will they come to the homeland or will they go to another diaspora? That calls for something which we haven't done yet in Israel, namely to establish special task force to bring them to Israel, irrespective of how much it angers Hollande of France. We should do the same thing in Britain, the same thing in Belgium and Holland, in Germany, in Russia, Belarus, Moldavia, etc. To get 500,000 Olim in the next 5 years is, I think, a conservative assessment if we do the right thing with a task force in the target countries and a task force which builds, beginning tomorrow, residential areas for them, new hospitals, new schools, new factories, places for employment, etc., as we did or almost did for Soviet Jews who came to...
Yoram Ettinger, you are fabulous. This has been extraordinary.
Thank you very much.
To speak to you. I hope it's only the first of many times you'll sit in this chair
hope so too.
And share your insight and your wisdom. And I'm sure there will be people who will be flabbergasted with the information you've given them. And there'll be some people who will not be happy. Some people will be very happy. But we learn from you. And you're a very sweet, wonderful man. It's an honor to have met you. Just promise me this is just the beginning.
Absolutely.
Kol tuv v'hatzlacha.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.